It's a little game. It's called Pin the Tail on the Donkey or the Elephant. Can you just show me where you think Utah is?
Utah in general is going to be right there. Right in there.
Like
About there.
kind of like toward the middle-ish.
Yeah.
You think Utah's that progressive, huh? I think a lot of the country looks at Utah as this like really red, deep red conservative state. You think Utah's more center than Florida?
Yeah.
Utah, home of the Great Salt Lake, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and purple politics?
But moving.
Yes, definitely. No question.
Let's not kid anybody. Utah is nowhere near swing state status, but they've embraced a lot of reforms you typically see in blue states. All-male elections, ranked choice voting, protection of same-sex marriage, criminal justice reforms, and maybe the most interesting one if you're among the 60% of Americans who say we need more than just the two major political parties, legitimate third-party options. We crisscrossed the state to find out if Utah, of all places, could become a model for a new, less partisan American democracy. And the story starts with smoothies.
What does a Senate candidate want to be seen eating or drinking? How much thought do you have to put into it?
I try not to eat anything that's going to end up on my shirt
You never want to be seen just eating regular quinoa.
because that's boring.
Boring.
Yeah, that's
you know.
interesting. That's interesting.
But sometimes boring's fine in politics.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we need more boring in politics.
Evan McMullin is running to become the next boring senator from Utah.
Whatever you recommend, whatever you think's. Let me just keep it basic this time.
What he's trying to pull off, however, is anything but boring or basic. McMullin has a chance to break the Republican and Democratic duopoly and win Utah's Senate race without any party affiliation.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited about this.
He went with the recommended butterbeer.
This is good. This is really good.
A former CIA agent and chief policy director for House Republicans, McMullin checks most boxes for most conservatives, except one: support for Trump.
I think Utah, has the opportunity to help lead the country forward past this period of division and extremism that is tearing us apart, that I think threatens our future.
Here's where it gets a little complicated. McMullin actually ran for president in 2016 as a third option to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. He got nearly a quarter of the vote in Utah, including support from prominent Republicans like Senator Mike Lee. McMullin helped keep Donald Trump to just 46% of the vote, in a state the Republicans usually draw 60 or 70%. But now, 6 years later, Lee has become one of Trump's closest allies, and McMullin is campaigning again to knock Lee out of the Senate.
People assume that if you vote for Trump, that means you were a supporter of everything he said or did. And it's just not the case, especially here in Utah. Many people have been Republicans for a long, long time, and they're unwilling to vote in many cases for Democrats. However, they are willing to vote independent.
So why here, when similar independent bids have failed most other places? And when the incumbent, Mike Lee, who didn't accept our invitations for an interview, still has the money, party support, and Trump endorsement many believe he needs to secure his re-election? Well, one factor is the unusual boost Utah Democrats gave McMullin, choosing not to nominate their own candidate for the race, and instead rallying their voters around the moderate conservative. And the other piece is the Trump-style combative politics other conservatives may embrace just don't play as well in a state where 2/3 of the residents belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Its members found Utah in the 19th century after they were chased out of the Northeast and Upper Midwest.
The persecution of my ancestors because they were a part of a religious minority still makes me more sensitive than maybe many others in this country to the persecution of minorities of any kind.
The church looms large over everything in Utah politics, and for as reliably Republican as their members may be, they've also been quick to embrace immigrants and same-sex marriage and climate science as the Great Salt Lake dries up. And then you start discovering more reforms that many other states consider progressive.
I think we see them as common sense.
Republican Deidre Henderson, Utah's lieutenant governor and top elections official.
What percentage of your ballots are cast by mail?
90+%.
And how do people feel about that?
People love vote by mail. So we can have easy access to the ballot as well as wonderful election security. You can have both. It's not one or the other. Yeah.
That's not to say Henderson hasn't been swatting down election misinformation since the day she took office in 2021.
It's one thing to get angry over something that happened. It's another thing to get angry over things that didn't happen. And I'm seeing people in positions of public trust capitalizing on that and trying to spin it for their own personal political gain, and it is very disturbing.
It's Republicans here, standing up to Republican attacks on election integrity.
So maybe that supermajority actually provides us some cover to do some things.
There are fewer consequences, maybe.
Maybe.
There's also an intense focus on community among church members, which has helped inoculate Utah against some of our nation's growing polarization.
We're
Pretty red.
We're pretty red, and yet we can work together to find solutions to these problems that typically seem right and left, but here in the state, they're just right or wrong.
We heard that a lot.
We accept one another, for our values, and that the different values bring us together.
For some, Trump values are Utah values.
You vote for him?
Oh yeah, because he gets things done.
But most of the Utahns we spoke to expressed concern over Trump.
I don't really like the guy.
People are concerned about it.
Mormon people are pretty friendly and nice and polite, so he rubs me wrong.
The brash language of Trump doesn't go well with the community feeling from the LDS Church.
No, it doesn't. No. I know that people of good conscience that are members of the LDS religion here really have some dissonance with that. They don't want to be a part of that.
That's former State Senator Rebecca Chavez-Houck, a rare Democrat elected to office, who warned us not to confuse Utah for a purple state.
The people are here. The people that represent them are over here.
For all the moderate movement we've mentioned, it's still a state where the legislature has gerrymandered Democrats out of Congress, voted to ban abortions, and prohibited transgender athletes from competing in girls' sports. Instead, Chavez-Houck sees Utah more as a Republican stronghold going through an identity crisis.
It is kind of this really interesting tension of the conservatism maybe gone awry with some of these extremist groups and the LDS Church and a lot of moderate Republicans who really try to pull things a little bit more to the center right.
So maybe the secret to more independent and third-party candidates is looking to states that don't have much of a second party.
In the state of Utah, Democrats are like endangered species.
Dr. Leah Murray, professor at Weber State.
You can carve out space as an independent and have a shot if you can pick up disgruntled Republicans and Democrats who would really like to win something finally.
By the way, we had planned to meet up with Murray for a good old-fashioned beer summit, but...
And then I was like, oh no, wait. We're not allowed.
I understand. State employee on the clock.
So it became a Brussels sprout summit.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Don't they look really pretty? If I get a giant green thing in my teeth, you have to tell me. Okay?
Likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Anyway, back to politics.
The number one voting group for the Republican Party is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So they are loyal, they are reliable, they are consistently voting.
But research shows their loyalty has waned over the last decade, even as evangelical Christians become more likely to vote Republican.
So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints get started in upstate New York, they get kicked out. They move to Ohio, they get kicked out. They move to Missouri, they get kicked out. But they remember being treated badly. And that really can inform the way you relate with politics.
There's definitely an appetite here for a less combative brand of conservatism, which has seemingly created a lot of voters willing to swing a little bit on the political spectrum.
Never a Democrat. But maybe an independent?
Right.
Is that enough to tilt a Senate election in a conservative state toward an independent for the first time since 1976? McMullin's banking on it.
But here in Utah, and I think across the country, the people between here and here have a tremendous amount in common. And they're a majority of Utah, and they're a majority of the country. We will not protect American democracy in the years ahead if we do not build a new, sustainable, cross-partisan coalition to do it.